Hello everyone, my name is Vic and I've been working on a 1957 Chevy Townsman station wagon for the last couple of years. More recently, the last couple of days, I've been installing a Specialty Power Windows windshield wiper kit. I did this because I wanted to smooth out the firewall on the car, and the best way to do that was by moving the wiper motor inside. After some research, it turns out that Specialty Power Windows kit was one that was more or less compatible with the Vintage Air AC unit that I've got in the car. So I set about trying to install it, and the first thing that I ran into was that the location that is referenced in their instructions, which are, by the way, very good. They include a lot of detail, pictures, and so forth. But the location they specified wasn't really going to work out for me. They recommended mounting it on the bottom of the dash, which would have required the use of a U-bend, a large U-bend, for it to connect to the passenger side transmission unit. So I took a little bit different approach and installed the motor in the kick panel area. I will show you how I did it. I didn't go into a step-by-step installation guide because by and large the directions are pretty good for that. But I did want you to be able to see how it turned out and where I routed it, and then give you some idea of the things that I ran into with it. Now, the car itself, I'll give you some exterior shots here. The car's come a long way from when I first drove it home from St. Louis. I installed an LS3 from Ohio Speed into a Roadster Shop chassis, mainly because I wanted the driving characteristics of a more modern frame. I've performed a number of modifications on it, including doing suicide doors on the rear doors and adding Bel Air Nomad crown molding in the back in the place of the 210 moldings that were originally on it. Also in the back, I have welded the tailgate and the liftgate together to make a single unit, so it lifts up more like a modern hatch. This allowed me to get rid of the hinges at the bottom, which were pretty ugly. Over here, to give you a view of the suicide doors. This modification was recommended by a friend of mine, Charles Lynn Smith. He and I went to high school together. And when he heard that I'd bought the car, he said, you know what would be really cool is to have suicide doors like the old Lincoln Continentals had, where the door handles are right next to each other. So I used a kit from Scissor Doors in Nova Scotia. It's a single hinge kit, and it worked out pretty well. The doors open and close, very nicely. So that's what the project, what I've been doing up to this point, and so let's get on with the windshield wiper part of this. As I had mentioned, the instructions referenced using the area underneath the dash here to install the wiper motor, but that really wasn't going to work out very well for me. So I looked around to see what might work, and I ended up installing the motor down here. You can see in the kick panel area. It's in an area that's kind of recessed behind the door jamb, the front door jamb, and it allowed me to not only hide it, but also have a nice path for the initial run of tubing to the first transmission post, which is on the passenger side. The way this works is that there's tubing that is attached to these transmission pieces, and there's a spiral wound cable that runs on the inside of it, and it comes in contact with a tooth gear that as the cable moves back and forth, it causes those posts to rotate and give you your windshield wiper action. So basically there's three pieces to the tubing. They call it A, B, and C. And the A piece was the most difficult for me. Well, what I ended up doing to make it a little bit easier, if I can get a picture of it here through the AC vent, is I spliced it in the middle. That allowed me to insert the cable much easier than it would have been otherwise, and then kind of reassemble stuff loosely until everything fit, and then tighten all the joints up. So that's the A section that goes from the motor up to the first transmission post. And then there's a B section that runs from the passenger side to the on over to the driver's side. And the driver's side has a short section on it. Let me get over here to where I can show you that as well. The driver's side has a short section they call, they label it C, and that 4-inch section is there just for noise reduction. So when you fire up the unit, the cable moves back and forth, and the posts rotate. What this has allowed me to do is to remove all of the original hardware, the motor, etc., from the firewall, and reposition the motor into a convenient location. Now, one of the questions that people have about the SPW unit is how much noise does it make? So what I'll do here, I've got a 2-speed switch that I purchased along with the kit, and what I'll do is I'll turn it on. So you can hear the noise that the motor makes. It's a little bit of noise, not very bad, and will probably quiet down once the kick panels cover the motor itself. And on the outside you can see the action of the wipers. They sweep from the center to outboard, and tie wraps won't work very well as wipers, but they recommend using them to make sure that everything is working as it should before you install the actual wipers themselves. On high speed, you can hear that the motor the noise increases slightly, but not too bad. Okay, there are a few things I would like to mention about the installation as far as things I ran into, and may help you out if you're installing yours on a Tri-Five like I did. The first thing is that the wiper escutcheons themselves come with a built-in washer facility. It's a little brass tube that comes out the back of the escutcheon, and that tube is incompatible with the composite backing plate that comes with the kit. So what I had to do on both sides was cut that brass tube off. So if you plan to run window washers, you're going to have to come up with a different method of doing so. The other thing, one other thing that I thought is worth mentioning is that the defroster on mine, on the vintage air defroster, I had to notch it in order for the tube to clear the unit and be able to install it. It's just the clearance is too tight right there for the vintage air defroster to work. So I cut out a small section to allow the tube to fit right alongside it. I don't think that will affect the actual operation of the defroster at all. But that's one thing you're going to have to do. The other thing that I ran into is that the tubing that they send some aluminum tubing, which is pretty nice, but it's really not long enough to go from the passenger side to the driver's side. So in my case, what I did was I went down to the auto parts, bought some 3/8 brake line, and then I used that. I flared both ends and bent it to make it work between the two units. But that's a pretty easy fix. Okay, so there you have it. That's the installation from my point of view. Again, they offer a different way of doing it in their instructions, but this is what worked out best for me. It's basically a 2-day job. You can probably do it on a weekend. I'm not sure how much longer it would take if you had to actually uninstall the windshield wipers that are on a stock car. If you were using this to replace them, might take some additional time. Might be quicker if you're not old and decrepit and prone to being distracted like I am, but nonetheless, it's the fairly simple, straightforward mod, and one that I think will work out pretty good. Hopefully I'll never have to test it in the rain. Thanks a lot for watching.